Hello and welcome to The Cosmic Nomad. I'm your host, Bailey Rushlow, and this is a space for the curious and the heart-led, where we explore the human experience through travel, nature, spirituality, and real-life transformation through beautiful conversations. As I discover my way of living what I call an inspired life, I share the practices, stories, and perspectives that have helped guide me back to myself. Hello, beautiful people. I am so glad that you're here. Honored to have you in this space and grateful to be sharing it with you. I am in London and I have been so excited to share this episode with you for a while. I didn't know where exactly I was going to place it in the outline of the episodes, but lately we've just been kind of going with whatever's coming up to be shared. And today, am I queer enough? A bisexual journey. I'm going to take you through my journey as a part of the queer community, what that looks like, how it felt, especially being raised in evangelical Christianity, where being queer was not an option, but not even talked about or discussed. Yeah, we've come a long, long way. So get comfy, pull up a chair, go for a walk with your dog, whatever feels good to you in this moment. This is going to be a really expansive journey to listen to. So I hope you're ready. And yeah, let's get into it. I grew up not knowing that women could be queer. My first introduction to queerness came through the Bible, as it does for many people who are raised in evangelical Christianity. And it was not gentle. It was Sodom and Gomorrah. It was the idea that queer people were destined for hell. And because the Bible only talks about men being gay, I didn't even know queer women existed. I had never heard of people being lesbian or bisexual until I was really old, I don't know, late teens, like 18, 19. I mean, I was old. And it felt like queerness was something it was just underground. Like it was something kind of shameful. And according to my conditioning, it was a choice. It was a sin. And it's just like stealing or cheating or adultery or being queer, right? Like it was all a choice. It was all a sin. It was all frowned upon. And it was all something that you would be sent to hell for. It's crazy looking back because I had so much judgment in my heart, like deeply rooted, conditioned judgment toward people who were queer, because to make an exception for queerness would have meant questioning everything that I believed about sin, about scripture, and about the character of the God that I was raised believing in. And I remember seeing people growing up who were like a little bit more openly queer. Maybe they dressed colorful. Maybe they were just a little more flamboyant. Maybe they're a little more, I don't know, whatever. You just looked at them and you were like, there's something different about you, And I remember feeling that judgment of like, you're choosing this sinful life. Oh, and it just it crushes me to remember that judgment, but also I don't know how I could have felt any other way about it, And my parents weren't homophobic. They weren't teaching me to hate the gays at all. But it was simply a societal conditioning and a religious conditioning that was like, they're living in sin. And that was all that I knew about it. And the hypocrisy, which just runs rampant through evangelical culture. And I've mentioned this in other episodes, I was homeschooled birth through high school graduation. I was raised in and out of church, in and out of homeschool communities. And I'm grateful for a lot of that. There were some beautiful things that came from it, truly. There were also a lot of things that were not so beautiful and that kept me very much conditioned and indoctrinated in a certain way of being and believing and thinking and being curious about the world. And there were also things that were not so great that I have had to deconstruct as an adult. And a lot of them involved the control around being indoctrinated into a religious system from a young age and having a lot of your curiosity stifled by that system and having so little compassion for other people in other walks of life. And it's not even that I was outwardly showing them my judgment. It was an internal, holier than thou kind of moment. I remember when the TV show Modern Family first came out and the way that it was talked about in Christian circles, because some of the main members of the cast are openly gay on the show. And it was one of the first times that a gay family with two dads had ever been seen on TV before. Like, there had been a couple here and there, like there's a lesbian relationship in Friends that you see a little bit, which was revolutionary. It was one of the first on TV, you know? And I just remember a lot of the Christian circles being like, this show is trash. Don't watch it. It is normalizing and celebrating homosexuality. And I had never seen it, but I was like, oh, damn, like that sounds really evil. And like, this is the state of the world that we're in, you know, that this is becoming normalized. I was a little bit curious to watch it, but I didn't, of course, until many years later. It's actually one of my favorite shows. What really did it for me was watching Glee. I think I was 21, maybe. And I watched it in secret late at night on my phone because I knew that my family wouldn't approve of me watching this, you know, secular TV show about choir kids and musical theater. But there were some really profound coming out stories. If you've seen the show, then you remember when Santana's character comes out. And that shook me. That was the first time I had ever seen a character in a movie or TV or in real life, like anywhere, come out like that. And it's like it lit a fire within me and I couldn't name it. I just felt like I was witnessing a part of myself that I didn't know existed. And it scared me. And it made me curious. And it was like overnight I realized I don't think I'm just straight. And I've always just been straight. And in my mind, that's the only thing I'm allowed to be. And now I have doubts and I have questions and I feel a little bit concerned and a little bit thrilled. And I have no idea what this means for me. And I just kind of let it simmer. I didn't do anything. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to sit with it. And I did. And during that time, more and more representation started showing up online. More people started sharing their stories. And the conditioning in my mind started to loosen its grasp a little bit. And I started to notice this like quiet fascination, like a hum in the background. I had no language for it, no examples, no one in my world who was openly queer, except for this one guy that worked in our little flower shop in our little southern town. And my one friend that had came out to me that had, you know, a year before made me feel so sad. And now I didn't feel sad about it at all. In fact, I felt a little bit embarrassed that I had felt sad and that I couldn't have shown up for my friend more authentically. And I remember even then, you know, that my kindness toward queer folks, like even with all my conditioning, even with all my indoctrination, I was never mean to anyone queer. I was never rude. I was never like calling people out or making fun of them or anything like that. But in my heart, I carried this subconscious agenda. Like, maybe I could win them over to Jesus if I'm really nice to them. Right? Like maybe I can make them see that like Jesus loves them and I'll guide them on the right path and maybe they'll like not be gay eventually. I didn't understand anything. And I was holding on to my beliefs so hard because they felt like life or death. There's a moment actually from my childhood that I remembered a few years ago. I was maybe like 9 or 10, and I had this little playhouse in my backyard. And I had a friend over. And I remember that we would literally just kiss behind my playhouse. And I did not know what sex was. I had never seen porn. No one had ever had the talk with me. I had no reference for anything other than just following what felt good and what was natural in my body. And somehow, without even having the language for it, there was already this quiet shame meter in my body. Like, I knew not to tell anyone. I knew not to tell my parents or my friends. It didn't feel wrong in my body. Like, to me, it felt right. It felt good. But it felt like it would be wrong out loud. And that memory stayed locked away like a little time capsule in me, forgotten until many years later when I started exploring my queerness and it hit me, oh my God, this has always been here. I just didn't know how to recognize it. And for so long, being queer just felt like the thing that only existed in faraway places. Like other people, like celebrities would come out in magazines or like Glee, but not here, not in my family, not in me. That wasn't the way. And I carried so much judgment. And in the process of seeing that judgment, recognizing it, calling it out in myself, I began to see my hypocrisy and my judgment as intrigue, curiosity, maybe a little bit of jealousy even, part of me that longed for that kind of freedom. And I think that is the medicine of jealousy, is that it shows us something in us that maybe we want to experience or to explore, and maybe we don't feel like we can, and we then project judgment toward the people who do experience it. Judgment toward the people who we do see embodying certain things. And it's funny to be on this journey when you start looking back, as most queer folks do at some point. You go, what was my queer awakening, And I think it was Santana in Glee for me, for sure. But looking back even further, I think, wow, I had this strange mix of fascination and jealousy toward girls a lot of my life. Like, I used to feel this twinge when I saw certain girls, like the way they laughed, the way they moved, the way their hair fell. I'd be like, why do I want to be her? Why does she make me feel this way? But the truth was I didn't want to be her. I wanted to be close to her. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to like me. And it took me years to understand that what I was calling jealousy was actually attraction. Then I realized, oh my God, it felt like I was turning a light on in the room that I didn't even know was off. Trying on the word bisexual was really weird for me. I felt like an imposter. I felt like, I don't know if I can call myself that because I've never had any queer experiences, and it feels unfair to people who have been queer and fought for their rights and been through bullying and been through all these crazy experiences and journeys and been excommunicated from their families. And like, I was like, I don't have any of that. So do I even have the right to consider myself gay? Like, and then what does that mean for me? And I don't know. It was awkward internally. Of course, no one in my external world knew this. My parents, my friends, no one. I think I remember telling one friend, like, hey, I actually think I am attracted to women. And she was like, yeah, I kind of guessed. I was like, excuse me? She's like, I just kind of felt it. And I was like, wait, it was obvious to you? She's like, well, I just know you really well. And I just felt like that makes sense for you. And I remember being stunned. I was like, wait, how did you know? And I didn't even know. And I remember coming out to my dad. I walked in the kitchen and I literally blurted out, I think I'm attracted to men and women. I just thought you should know. And he looked at me totally unfazed. And he was like, yeah, well, women are beautiful. I mean, I'm attracted to them too. And I was like, no, like sexually, I'm attracted to women. Like, I don't just think women are beautiful. I'm bisexual. And he like paused and blinked and was like, oh, okay, cool, I guess. That's interesting. He didn't know what to say. He handled it well. Poor dad. I really just kind of sprung it on him. I did not give him a second to process. I literally just left the room. I'm really lucky that my parents never let this be an issue for them in our relationship, because I have many friends in my life where that is absolutely not the case. But I remember telling my mom that I was bi a few years later, and she was like, "Oh, but you're dating a man." And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Well, how does that work? Like, if you're bi?" And I was like, if a nun realized that she was a lesbian, would she not be a lesbian because she had never had sex before? Like, do you have to have had sex with someone to know that that's your preference? Or do you just know? Who told you that you were straight? And it fascinates me because there's this thing you find it in straight and queer spaces, this unspoken doubt about bisexuality. In a straight space, people assume that you are just experimenting, that your sexuality is defined by the gender of your current partner. Like, if you're with a man, you're kind of straight now, you know? And if you're with a woman, you have, quote, switched teams, right? And your identity is only real if it's visible, and only valid if it's active. And then, in the queer space, there's fear too, especially in the lesbian community, of dating bisexual women, because for so many, bisexuality has been used as this mask for experimentation. Like, people have been hurt by women who didn't know for sure if they were queer, and then they left relationships after realizing that they weren't actually queer. And I understand that fear. Like, I have so much compassion for that. And it creates this tension where you start asking yourself, like, am I queer enough? Like, will anyone take me seriously? Do I even belong here? And there's this feeling of not belonging, like being too queer for straight spaces and not queer enough for queer spaces. And it's like a really weird place to sit. But for anyone listening that needs a little encouragement, queerness is not just about who you date or how visible it is to others. It's actually about how you see the world. And what changed everything for me was finding community. And it did not happen overnight. At first, I tried looking for like meetups or events or pride stuff, anything that would just remind me that I wasn't alone. But where I was living, there really wasn't much. So I literally posted on a local Facebook group in my area, "Hi, are there any queer events happening anytime soon?" And people responded like, "No, there's not really anything, but if there were something, it would be really cool. We would love to come." I was like, what if I started my own thing? So I made a post on a local Facebook group and I said, "Hi, I'm Bailey. I am looking for queer friends and community. And I would love to suggest that we all meet up sometime this week, maybe on Sunday for a brunch. Here's the link to a WhatsApp group. Who wants to come?" Post. And I was like, and like threw my phone across the room, was like, "Okay, it's done." And a few days later, 10 women showed up to our first queer brunch. And we sat in a circle and we ate food and we shared our stories and the tender parts of our journey. And over time, that group became like a little family for me. We have movie nights, we go swimming in the ocean, we have picnics and game nights, and we celebrate each other's breakthroughs and heartbreaks, and we laugh all the time. And queerness stopped being something that I had to prove. And it started becoming a lens through which I see the world. For me, it's colorful, it's soft, it's radical, it's expansive. It's about rejecting the boxes and the binaries and the lies that say we're only worthy if we fit neatly into categories and heteronormativity. And queerness is actually really ancient. Like, long before colonization, there were people all over the world living outside rigid gender and sexuality norms. It is not a modern trend. It is not something people invented because of social media or because this generation is confused. It is memory. It has been here for as long as humans have existed. And it's woven into cultures and communities all over the world. And people in these cultures were not hidden. They were not shamed. They were often celebrated and revered, even seen as healers and spiritual guides. For example, in Turtle Island, or so-called America, there were two-spirit people, individuals who embodied both masculine and feminine energies. They often held special roles as artists and mediators and shamans. And the word two-spirit was created in the 90s to describe these identities, but the presence of these people goes back thousands of years. We see a similar story across South Asia and ancient Mesopotamia, where priests and priestesses served in the temples regardless of gender norms. Even in Greece and Rome, same-sex love was not seen as unnatural. It was documented. It was celebrated in poetry. It was normalized in many relationships. And then we ask ourselves, how the fuck do we get to where we are now? Where people who are queer are being targeted, bullied, unalived all over the world. Where in many cultures and countries, it's not even legal. You can be put in jail for being gay. And it brings us full circle all back to colonization, right? It brought with it a very specific idea of gender, sexuality, and it spread heteronormativity. It erased the fluid and expansive ways that humans have existed for millennia. And it tied queerness to shame and to sin. When we talk about reclaiming our queerness today, it is not just a personal act. It is an ancestral remembering. And it's not unnatural. It's nature. It's self, it's diverse, it's adaptive, it's infinite, it's wildflowers growing where they're not supposed to. Quote, supposed to. It's rivers carving new paths through the land. There's an amazing book called Queer Magic by Thomas Prower. And there's a quote that says, "The witches burned were often the queer ones. The wild women, the men in dresses, the gender non-conforming healers. The witch hunts weren't just about fear of magic. They were about enforcing conformity." And that stuck with me because when you zoom out, you realize that the shame, the suppression, the erasure, it didn't begin with us here today in this system. It began with colonization. It began with rigid religion, with systems that feared anything too free or too alive. But we survived anyway, in secret, in art, in the quiet tenderness between people who loved in the ways the world didn't understand. But we've always been here. And queerness isn't just about who you love. It's about how you see the world. It's about community. When queerness stopped being this thing I had to prove, it started feeling like a lens. Like I was putting on glasses that showed me beauty in places I had never noticed before, and became an act of rebellion and an act of self-love and an act of joy. There's another quote from Queer Magic, the book that I really recommend and love, that says, "Queerness is a sacred act of resistance against systems that want us smaller, quieter, easier to manage, and every queer joy is a spell of liberation." But the first time that I kissed a woman as an adult, that was its own kind of spell. Oh my God. I remember being really nervous, but also I knew this is something that I want. Like, this is something that I don't believe is wrong anymore. I remember that I had just started dating women a few months before, and I was a little bit nervous, like getting on the apps, and I was really scared that people would think that I was not really bi, like I was just trying to use them to experiment or explore, and that's really not what my heart was at all. But I was kind of scared of that perception because it's such a common fear, you know? And I've been trying to learn like the delicate balance of coming from only dating men into experiencing dating and relationships and romance with women. What's different? How are the gender roles? Like, who pays for the check? Who opens the door? Like, you know, all of the little nuances of physical touch and flirting. And it was an entirely new world for me. And it was tender in ways that I hadn't expected, and really affirming in ways I didn't know that I needed. And I found myself still wrestling with the question of like, am I queer enough? I don't think I'm really visibly queer, and I had never had relationships with women before, and I typically had been in straight passing relationships with men. And I just had so many voices in my head being like, you're not really part of this community. Like, you don't really belong here. You're just curious. Or like, it's too late to claim this part of yourself, you know? And I remember there were moments with other queer people, specifically this one lesbian. I remember asking me, she was like, "Oh, have you ever been in relationships with women?" And I was like, "No." And her face kind of like softened into something polite, but like distant and uninterested. And she was just a friend. Like, we weren't interested in each other or anything. But I felt that in my chest, and I felt like, oh, like I failed some kind of test. Like somehow my queerness wasn't real, quote, real, until someone else validated it. And what I know now is that you do not have to prove to others, even to yourself, because it's not defined by your relationships or your experiences or your visibility. Like, if you feel it in your bones and in your body, it's real and it's enough. And you're enough. You've always been enough. It's not something you have to earn either. Okay, so back to the story. I had been on this date with this wonderful woman. She was Irish, and we just had the best time. Like, we had the most wonderful conversations. It was easy, it was flowing, and I knew, like, I want to kiss her. And we were on her rooftop pool, talking and just like swimming, having a nice time, and there was no one else up there. And we were really close, and she like pulled me in, and I think she asked, like, can I kiss you? And I was like, yeah. And that kiss was so magnetic. I felt like lightning through my entire body. And I knew in that moment everything that I have known about myself, that I've been wondering and curious and thinking about myself and my role in this whole community. Not that I needed the validation of being like, okay, yes, I am actually attracted to women. But in that moment, I remember feeling like, oh, no, it's all real and it's all valid. And it did give me this sense of affirmation in everything I had been wondering and curious about for so long. And that kiss changed my life. I'll forever be so grateful for that. And for the incredible and intelligent and powerful and beautiful women that I have had the opportunity to know and experience and date since then has been so transformative. That memory will be so alive and vibrant in my mind forever, as will the first time that I ever held hands with someone or took a nap with someone, literally just slept next to each other, and like the peace and quiet and safety that I felt in my body, and dying laughing with a woman on dates or whatever, and you're just like, oh my god, this is everything. And of course, the first time that you ever have sex and you're ever in an intimate space with another person of the same gender is like so transformative, opened my heart and my mind, my body in ways that have changed me forever. I actually wrote a poem about all of this that I'm going to read at the end of this episode, so stay tuned until then. Right now, in the world, it feels very heavy and scary for so many people. And I think about how sacred it is to just be here, to exist, to love, to laugh, to hold hands in public, to be seen. Right now, for so many people around the world, simply existing isn't safe. 65 countries in the world still criminalize same-sex relationships. And in 12 of those, being queer can even mean a death sentence. And even in countries where queer relationships are technically legal, but face threats like homophobia and bullying, there are some amazing ways that we can support queer lives and community, like buying from queer-owned businesses and artists because their work is resistance too, supporting creators on platforms like Patreon, Instagram, sharing queer stories, books, films, music, podcasts to amplify their voices. Also, don't hesitate to call out homophobic or transphobic comments, even in jokes. Like, it's not funny. And vote for policies and leaders that protect the rights of queer folks. Something small you can do that often goes a long way is creating visible safety. Like, maybe you have a sticker or a sign in your shop window that signals inclusion and acceptance can actually go a long way and make a bigger difference than you think. Supporting queer people isn't just about showing up in big ways, it's also in the small, quiet ones too. Like speaking up in conversations when harmful things are said. Creating space where people don't have to perform or explain their existence. Using people's correct pronouns. If you're part of this community, remember, please, that your joy is resistance, that your softness is power, and that you do not have to earn your place here because you already belong. Maybe you've felt the weight of the shame. Maybe you're just trying to figure it all out. Whatever it looks like, however it feels in your body, it's enough. And there is time for things to develop and to unfold. And you don't have to rush anything, you know? Everything will unfold in its perfect timing. And there's nothing for you to prove. So just continue working on your relationship with yourself and figuring out what it is that makes you excited in this life. What it is that turns your mind on. What it is that makes you feel alive. So I would love to invite you to ponder these questions. What part of myself have I hidden away because the world told me to? What would it mean to show up as more of myself today, this week, this year? How can I hold space for others to do the same? You know, as I reflect on my own journey, growing up believing that queerness was wrong and sinful and even dangerous, it makes me think about how many of us are just living inside of stories we didn't write, stories we inherited, stories that taught us to fear difference, to shrink our own truth, to believe that there's only one right way to love or to live or to exist. But who benefits when we believe those stories? When we don't question them, when we don't trust ourselves enough to explore what's true for us individually. I think about this all the time, how much my own liberation came from learning to hold discernment, to question the systems and the narratives, not just from a place of rebellion for rebellion's sake, but from a place of curiosity. What if they were wrong about being queer? What else might they be wrong about? And what opens up in our lives when we stop outsourcing our truth to systems that were never built for us? So maybe this is an invitation to yourself to ask, what have I been taught about love? And I didn't. And the LGBT plus community. What actually feels true in my body? What would it mean to let others live as if they are enough? The world wants us to be small and compliant, but your joy and your curiosity and your courage to question things is actually a medicine. It's how we build a more free world. So this poem is for every part of you that is learning to trust yourself again. Her hair smelled like coconut, and I was intoxicated from the first moment I hugged her. Crystal blue eyes that sparkled like the sea that we sat next to, laughing, talking, tracing each other's tattoos with sandy fingertips. She spoke like a poem half finished, all mystery and warmth, like the universe had kissed her cheek and told her to go gently ruin people in the best way. We ate dinner twice because we couldn't stop telling each other stories. Her hand brushed mine as we walked, and I felt electricity go through my body like a Technicolor psychedelic wave. After dinner, we wandered to the park barefoot and laid ourselves across the grass like offerings to the stars. The city pulsed somewhere around us, We were in our own world, trading past life stories like secrets we'd only just remembered. Her fingers grazed my leg mid-sentence, and I forgot every language except the one where mouths became prayers and kisses mean, I remember you. Falling asleep next to her is everything. Her fingers intertwine with mine, even when she's asleep. And I think to myself, I can't believe I spent my life thinking this was a sin. I watch her breathing and I realize this is not forbidden. This is holy. And maybe God was never angry, just misquoted. And maybe God was just a girl after all, in love with all she created. And that was the original sin. And if loving her was my fall from grace, then I'd gladly fall again and again. Because in her arms, I didn't lose heaven. I remembered it. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this and you want to hear more queer stories, send me a message. I always love hearing from you. Thank you for your support, for your encouragement. I'm so grateful to those of you who listen and write to me. It makes me feel like we're all in this together. And if you're interested in going deeper in this journey with me, I have launched my Patreon, and I would love to see you over there, where I have behind the scenes updates, things that are going on in my life, poems, voice notes, and monthly meditations. I'm doing one meditation per month, all centered around a different theme, because they're really empowering, impactful, and yours to download and to keep forever. So if you're in a place of desiring a little more stillness, mental clarity, quiet in the inner landscape of your life, I would be honored if you check out the meditations I have available on Patreon, and would love your support there to be able to keep the podcast going. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and until next time, open heart, open mind, stay curious, and queer.